while we've built this great technology stack that was working in the beer space, when COVID came along, every beer keg on the planet just came to a screeching halt. That was a bit of a catalyst for us to really start applying that technology stack into adjacent markets as well. And that's how we've grown from not just binary beer, but binary tech now as the big company, and binary beer and binary med working in the pathology space, and binary loop working in the circular waste economy as well, and extending through markets that way.
Let's start from the beginning, because I know we both proudly went to University of Wollongong, and I know we both couldn't believe we didn't cross paths at that point, even though our years don't cross over exactly, but just being the type of people we were and interested in the same types of things. I know that it's such an interesting beginning, especially for people who are interested in technology.
Well, yeah, first of all, thanks for having me on the podcast. It's good to be here. Yeah, my story, I've always been into technology, I guess. I've been a tinkerer ever since I was a child. I've loved electronics and pulling things apart and seeing how they worked. And going through university, I actually began in electrical engineering because I thought this is where I'm going to be able to play with electronics and wireless systems and, things that really excite me. And I kind of learned through that degree that there were a lot of really exciting things happening across in the computer science department. And that was actually where a lot more of the digital electronics was happening, like the IoT and robotics and computer vision and things like that. So kind of moved my degree across there at UAW and finished off in the computer science area. I kind of found myself in a career in the medical space, in radiology, monitoring. Like you have x-rays where, they print out the film of the x-ray, and these days it's all handled in what's known as a PACS, or a picture archive and communication system. And so I was really involved in the digital side of medical data there, and it was a really encompassing career. I got to build a lot of skills that really helped later on in life while I was working there. But I think really starting off the entrepreneurial journey was coming back to my roots of what I really enjoyed, putting together the electronic side and the physical world and connecting that into the digital world. And it was really spearheaded by the advent of LPWANs, or low power wide area network technology. It's like wireless, long range, low powered communications protocols that when I saw what was becoming available, I thought what that could do for the future. And that was enticing enough for me to really double down and say, I think this is going to change the world. Let's do something in this space. And that was enough to really, start off this entrepreneurial journey.
How hard was that to start? Because I think for a lot of people, I think the majority of us, starting anything can be super scary. And, I know you were coming out of like you said, a career that you were starting in that kind of healthcare medical space. I know you're very humble. You're not going to say too much about how awesome you are, but tell people about what you did, because I think people need to know that. That's what blows me out, is you inventing your own way of tracking objects and how you developed that in your garage. How did that even start?
Oh, wow. Over while I was working in the medical space, I was always working on side projects as well. And I watched a lot of things come to fruition on the side that I was really interested in, and thought, wow, I wish I could take a go at that. And then you see someone else does it, and kudos to them. They've done a brilliant job of it. And I would think, that's an opportunity I could have been a part of. And it would happen a few times. You'd see this spark of what could become. And, a few years later, you see that, it was a good intuition that you had about that. And that was a bit of the background to getting that confidence to actually jump on the train next time it came by. This time there was a great idea and do it that way. I think looking back at it as well, a big part of it was just asking, how do I want to lead the next chapter of life as well? Having children, and, it's a big change, to your marriage and your relationship. And, how do I want to lead the family? Is it going to be, a more traditional way of doing things, or is it going to be a bit more risky and pursuing your passion? And, that can have some really big challenges for bringing up a family in that environment. But I thought still at the end of the day, that was probably the right path for me and the way that I wanted to show my children growing up as well. So that was enough to really help decide, had the courage really to do the unknown, tread the unknown path.
And tell us about your tinkering, how did that tinkering turn into a business? Because again,
Oh, yeah.
that intrigues me. Kind of a lot of the coolest stories is where did the magic begin? And I know what you've done is amazing. So tell us about that.
Yeah, when you look forwards, you don't see the path, and you look back and you see this like common thread that's actually everything lined up to where you are now. At the time, my wife and I were running a little backyard business, selling little electronic widgets for homebrewers on connecting brewing beer to the internet sort of thing, and making yeast starters to brew good beer. And with this advent of LP WAN technology, I was really interested in the next step of how we connect people with their homebrew case and see what was happening there. And around that time, there was also a hackathon as well that was involved around that time that really showed me what people can accomplish when they really do something they're passionate about in a very short period of time. That was another eye-opener. And turning that into a business, really, we took it to iAccelerate, which is Wollongong's startup kind of community ecosystem here. It's a bit of an accelerator / incubator, and pitched the idea to them. And that started to really open doors. In the early days when I started, we were working, in the backyard business from home, living on a farm in a small town where there's more cows than people. The network wasn't there to really grow a business, and I certainly had no knowledge about it. But being part of a community here, I was able to connect with other people who were either in that space or about to go through those challenges as well, and go through a lot of whole pitching as well, testing the ideas and building rigor around them. We took the ideas to the United States through a pitching program, which was really exciting and challenging in itself. And a lot of the feedback was really showing that what we had was an exciting idea, a great technology that could do great things in the world, but our vision was very narrow. Looking at homebrew, it's a very small market segment, and kind of, if you've got something great and you can change the world, it's kind of your duty really to do everything you can with that to kind of make the biggest impact you can. And it really got my mind thinking about what could we do with this technology for homebrewers to the broader global brewing scene. And that was kind of where we started off with a company called Binary Beer, connecting not just homebrewers, but the world's beer kegs to the cloud, and monitoring the assets that were in trade, and expanding upon that to not just monitor the beer kegs, but also the beer inside them, and delivering business value from that. So that was kind of what turned it into a business to begin with. But in the background, it's not just beer for me. This is a world-enabling technology. If we think about the future of humanity, or where we are at the moment, we're just in this information age right now, where we're used to everyone being connected to the internet all of the time. And if I look at the next stage, what we call Industry 4.0, or the digital transformation age, we're not just every person, but everything is becoming connected to the cloud. And that's the vision for what I'm trying to usher ahead and push forwards. So while we've built this great technology stack that was working in the beer space, when COVID came along, every beer keg on the planet just came to a screeching halt. That was a bit of a catalyst for us to really start applying that technology stack into adjacent markets as well. And that's how we've grown from not just Binary Beer, but Binary Tech now as the big company, and Binary Beer and Binary Med working in the pathology space, and Binary Loop working in the circular waste economy as well, and extending through markets that way.
It's good to meet you, Michael. I've just through Adam learned a lot about your journey and everything, and it's very fascinating. And I've never met anybody that has actually done the start something in a garage and then build from there. It's sort of like folklore. It reminds me a lot about Steve Jobs and Wozniak, that story. But what do you think is the future of Australian technology? I know we're at like an isolated sort of market and all of that. Do we have, can you see a future there for innovation?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. When I look at like the electronics industry and manufacturing industry that we've had a bit of a lull where, you can't buy an Australian television anymore for so many years. It just doesn't exist. But in the more deeper or high technology space, we do have a lot of capability onshore for that. So for the manufacturing and testing and provisioning and production side, we are quite isolated in, there's always, if you're doing some hardware component to the business, working with clients in Europe or North America, there are challenges around not just the shipping, but also the import duties and VAT and things, and moving around there. So that's part of the strategy about how do you service clients efficiently around the world, being an Australian company. But still, the core of what we do, all of the creation, all of the team we've built up and the know-how is absolutely world leading and coming from Australia. And I think that's where all the primary value is that we need to protect as well.
Are the stumbling blocks if there are any, is it the materials, the labor? What do you think is holding us back, if there is anything holding us back?
Yeah, I don't know if it's actually being held back. In the early days when we started off, my wife and I bought one-way tickets to Shenzhen, which is like the world's electronics manufacturing hub. And if you think about Shenzhen, you know how you have the Dick Smith store here in Australia or the J-Car store, and they sell a whole lot of things. And just out the back, they have this little components area out there. There's just a few shelves where they have resistors and capacitors and switches and all these cool little, widgets. Shenzhen is like, take that section of that store and then have a whole city of high-rise buildings, and on every floor of every building and every shop in every floor, it's a store, and every store is dedicated to like one of those little parts drawers in the back of your J-Car store. And if you walk into the library there, when you walk into the Shenzhen library, all these books are around. They're all on like motor speed drives or electronic control systems and stuff. It's just like that city is built to handle that part of manufacturing. So it's a very big divide from where we are as Australia and where our focus is as Australia. But also, I'm not sure that that's necessarily the part where we have to fix things either. Like, because the deep value, like that's a really valuable point in the production of bringing a vision to life. But so much more of the value is adjacent to that in creating the idea or commercializing the idea. And I think that's what we're really good at.
You always hear about the brain drain. I don't know if that's a fallacy or a truth, that, we have the smarts and the intelligence here, and then everyone goes off to America or wherever. Is that still the case? I know you've had experience in America, but bring it back.
I've witnessed that in a few ways, actually, where some Australian founders have done the Silicon Valley thing and either made it or come back, not making it there. And it is really exciting, the opportunity and the mindset that they have over there. Even in, one of the international startup cohorts that I went through as well, like the whole purpose is to try and find Australia's most promising startups, show them how they could build their business offshore and, try to make them build their company over there. So I understand that's kind of methodical in how, these whole cities can really build their startup ecosystem and grow in that manner. I haven't really witnessed it to too much of an extent, though, in that we also have people coming here as well to Australia, a lot of fantastic talent in both directions. So I think it's, while it's there, it's not one of my primary concerns. I'm seeing a really good flourishing community here locally and a good investor ecosystem as well to support the startups. And it's while there are challenges and you could do certain things overseas that you can't do here, you just got to take that on board and take an approach that does work with our DNA and what we are as a company.
Yeah, so you said earlier, Michael, because I think I might have introduced you as Binary Beer, because that was, as you said, that was the beginning, I think. And we all love beer, right? But things have changed. So you've got a few different names, you've got a few different brands. Can you just tell us a little bit about the actual product and a little bit of the variation through those different brands? Just a little summary of exactly what you are selling and what it does.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I've actually got some widgets off screen I can kind of show you. This is the first one, and this is just a beer keg tracker, right? It's got a circuit board in it. It has wireless transmitters. It's sort of like a little cell phone that sticks to a beer keg and sends data to the cloud. Yeah, we're using these new 5G LPWAN technologies. There's a whole lot of other barriers to actually getting a real life solution. Things about how do you do geolocation well, or how do you get battery life out of these? Like you have to charge your phone every day, whereas we need these to last 10 years without ever being charged up. How do you get signals out of really tricky places like underground cellars or attached to a beer keg that's metal and it doesn't radiate well when you put an antenna near metal? So there's all these extra roadblocks to getting real world solutions in IoT up and running. So that's kind of our kind of technology stack, really. Everything from the device to taking data and enriching it in the cloud to getting actual business insights that we're not just putting dots on a map, we're actually delivering the insights that industry is looking for. In the medical industry, I've got this is like a sample container. When you go to a collection center to have a pathology sample taken, and they transport that to the lab and they do all tests on it to figure out what's going on with the blood sample or whatever that specimen is. the biggest trouble in pre analytics, or basically the biggest trouble in all of this diagnostic process, you think the sample gets to the lab and they make a mistake or something sometimes, but really it's in that part getting the sample from the collection center to the lab where things tend to go wrong. And if you zoom out, it makes sense. That's in the wild world. We don't know what's going to happen. There's third-party couriers, there's aeroplanes, there's all sorts of things going wrong. So in this case, we have a different version of the sensor that, again, this is monitoring temperature, location, motion, things like that. And it's very similar circuitry and firmware inside, but we're leveraging that same technology stack, getting the battery life out of it, getting the signal reliability and integrity out of it, and then sending that data to the cloud and crunching all of that data to deliver the actual insights that build value for the pathology industry. So that's about making sure they're hitting all their quality requirements, gathering evidence, making sure that samples don't get spoiled or lost while they're during transit, making sure we get better patient outcomes, right? And that's kind of how we've taken the same technology stack, but by changing a little bit at the start, how we attach to an asset, and changing a bit at the end, how we actually present the data to give actual valuable insights. That's where we change things for different industries. And the third one is in the waste industry. So we work in the circular economy of waste, where we attach these to returnable bins like skip bins or stillages. Say you've got a motor oil or an old battery or an old gas bottle and you take it to the community recycling center to be disposed of. All of the bins there, that's where we're monitoring the bins, their location, making sure there's enough there to meet the EPA requirements for what needs to be at the community recycling center, and then building that whole business around making sure that the contractual obligations are being met and that the assets are being utilized as well as possible to deliver that service.
So without your invention, Michael, I imagine there was a huge gap in information previously in these areas, right? Like there's just no information, I would guess. Or was there some other system being used? How did it work?
A lot of it's legacy paper-based systems. Like we keep a log of what we've sent where and hope that it's still there when we go to get it. A lot of manual check and balancing. And then there's been a lot of previous technology, which was RFID sort of beacons, where you put an RFID on an asset, and then either someone has to bring a scanner or you have to set up infrastructure at the place to do the scanning to know what's there. And so what we're doing with IoT is the exact opposite, where the asset tells you where it is instead of you scanning where the asset is. And that's why it's so transformative across industries. And the thing we've come across in all of the industries we work in is this similar story of how they used to manage things manually. And it's just a giant unknown. If you think about beer, we've been putting beer into kegs for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And for all of that time, no one's ever known what happened to that the moment it left the brewery. And it's just in this last couple of years, we've had the technology to change that story. So it really is disruptive for all of the industries we work in.
It can just be applied to so many industries.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. How many? You've only only got three. I know that's probably pulling you a lot of different directions, but are there any other, if you can share, are there any other obvious or next steps areas that you guys are seeing that you can share?
If you look at the competitive landscape, there are a lot of competitors who work in the IoT space and have a generic IoT platform or a wide device suite of, just we've got all these IoT devices. Whatever your problem is, we'll be able to solve it with one of them. Our approach has been very different because by having a generic approach, you can offer dots on a map, or you can, give the client some kind of a building block solution of devices or platform and say, okay, you figure it out. To build an integration into whatever you've currently got and try and get value out of yourself. Whereas our approach has been one by one to go to different markets and make sure we understand what they need. And I think that's going to be the defensible way to build a business going into the future, like understanding a market, building a place of leadership, because IoT over the next decade is just going to become a commodity, right? It's, that part of it is going to get easier and easier for us as a business, not having to do it ourselves, and we can leverage other manufacturers to build that part of our chain. Then going beyond these three markets, there's plenty of opportunities in ag tech. If I think about the mobile returnable asset space, like 10 years ago, you could track a truck easy. It's $100,000 truck. It's got a power system. You could put $1,000 tracker in there and pay $50 a month, and it makes sense for such a large asset. And then going forwards, we've been able to track cheaper and more mobile and harder to track items like, with the beer kegs now, or the bins, or, pathology samples. And if you look to the future, then there's this kind of cutting edge or bleeding edge that's a little bit tricky at the moment, which would be small little totes and containers or shipping pallets. They're only worth about $10 each, and that's really the pushing the end of what you can do economically with today's technology. And that's kind of the direction it's going, where, again, not just people, which are very valuable, but just everything becoming connected to the cloud over time.
And then it's finding the value in that proposition, right? So whatever you can leverage back. So just for example, in the pathology, there's all this information that can improve the outcomes, like you said. So you're getting temperature and location and stuff that you could never put on a piece of paper before.
Yeah, absolutely. And what we find is it's less and less about tracking an asset. It's really understanding what's going inside that container, and looking in the medical space, a shipment of pathology samples, it can have, tens, sometimes over 100 samples in one shipment, going to a specialist lab somewhere. And the value of that is just immense. If that's lost or just temporarily lost and all the samples are spoiled, it's left on the tarmac. Sometimes there's been organ donations just left on the tarmac and lost. It's terrible patient outcome, for that to happen. And so it's kind of really rewarding and motivating to be working in an area of that whole workflow where we know we can deliver value in our clients that we work with. We get all these anecdotes back of how many times they've used the system to solve their issues. And every time that happens, you realize there's so many people at the end of that chain who didn't have to go and get another retest. And that's a really rewarding feeling.
That's awesome.
I couldn't think of a more rewarding outcome than preventing an organ from spoiling on the tarmac. I never thought about that, but that's not, an unfeasible sort of outcome, is it?
Yeah. There are plenty of samples that are taken that can't be taken again, like during certain phases of pregnancy as well, or just different high value samples where, just the mistreatment of that sample can be very impactful for the patient to lose that.
So with it being fairly new, do you find it difficult to get people's head around exactly what the value proposition is, Michael? What's the biggest challenge to getting the product out there?
I think that's it, that anytime you want to do a disruptive solution, there's this challenge that no one's looking for it because they don't know it exists. And you don't want to be the person with a solution to a problem that doesn't exist, which is why it's good to understand the market and make sure this is a fight worth fighting, that there is actually a product market fit with those early clients. And even when you're trying to get the word out there, you may want to put, just win for keyword searches or something in Google around what you do, when actually people are still searching for the old thing. So you still have to move into this entrenched industry and take some kind of a stand up there and be seen, even though that's not necessarily exactly what you're doing. So it's kind of been a recurring challenge in the industries that we work with. And we have a few strategies to get around that, really, about, word of mouth is always very valuable, or, just growing within existing clients as well, having a land and expand approach so that you can really get that prominence by working with large players that can take you a long step along the way on their own.
That reminds me of Henry Ford. He said if he left it up to his customers, they would ask him for a faster horse. So it must be difficult to educate people on an emerging technology that they don't even know exists.
And that's really paid off, I think. Like, we've had clients, we've had competitors in industries we work with that are really prominent and large, and they're ahead of us in their go-to-market strategy, in their partner networks, in their client base, but they're way behind us on the technology still, using legacy sort of the RFID sorts of technology. And it's a good place to be in, because you kind of have your mentors in the market showing you a go-to-market approach that works. And you also have this knowledge that, hey, also we've got something that's significantly better than the status quo as well. So yeah, it's a really good path to be on, and an exciting journey.
And I know with us, partnerships are super important. And you guys have, I think is Asai one of your partners?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
so you guys have got a huge partnership there. So tell us about that, and tell us, I don't know, just how I think you said a little bit then about your approach was a little bit about partnering and establishing yourself with organizations who are in a space, which makes sense to me. Yeah, tell us about your partnerships.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so that was in the beer space. Asahi Europe International, we've been tracking their kegs going from Italy to Spain. And it's basically that project has run for the last year, just monitoring a portion of their fleet into one market. And then, going forwards, it's exciting because they work in so many different markets as well. So having worked with a client and built a really strong value proposition with them and a good relationship, it's a great kind of approach to expansion, within the customer base you already have. Like they often say, it's much easier to resell to an existing customer than to find a new one out of the blue as well. And it's really good when the relationship works both ways. They've published some amazing things about us and the work we're doing together, and that kind of piques the interest of other clients as well. And in that industry, like in the draft beer industry globally, it's extremely consolidated. Like there are only a few players that control nearly all of the world's brands of beers, and that's why our go-to-market approach has been kind of go to the top players that control so many brands beneath them. And there are drawbacks to that, in that working with these large conglomerates can be very slow, but we also know that that's the path to achieving what we want to achieve in this market. And in the interim, it really helps to have these other markets, like with the medical and the waste industries as well, that have a different shape of go-to-market and different timeframes as well.
Yeah, because I remember talking about that kind of got put off during COVID. So that must be a good feeling to nail that one.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think, COVID was particularly hard on the draft beer industry. Nobody could go to a pub to drink beer anymore. So people could still drink beer in bottles and cans, but that entire industry and that powerful company really at that time wouldn't have been able to continue, for so long, having zero customers and zero capital expenditure happening in that market, without also having a technology that can work across adjacent markets as well. And it just so happened that we were already working in the medical space when COVID struck, and that coincided with every lab manager on the planet just being run off their feet trying to run these PCR samples and keep up with the demand as well. So it was great to be able to quickly take that technology and scale up in that market as well.
We've asked a few people about this with AI, artificial intelligence coming in. What implications does that have for your business specifically, but how do you think it's going to affect society in general, being a tech person?
I'm excited about it. I know there are a lot of people that are very concerned about it, and I don't think, I think the concerns should be valid too. Like I can't say that there's nothing to worry about with AI as well, but looking at the immense value that it can bring as well. Hey, I'm always an optimist. I think I have to be, and it's pretty incredible. So, we've already been using some machine learning around our geolocation. That means that sensors don't have to do work. We do all of the work in the cloud. We're constantly learning about supply chains and using the data that we collect to help build a story about where a sensor is in a supply chain and what that means without, using legacy old technologies that use a lot of energy like GPS. And now looking forwards, like our team were just at a hackathon last weekend where they were using APIs to ChatGPT to do image recognition. And, we're just doing tests like, can I use a camera now? We've got a technology on the kegs that has an infrared laser, and it measures the time of flight to bounce a light beam off the coupler that goes on a keg. And that's how we know when it's being drained, right? And now you're able to take a photo and just ask ChatGPT, is there a coupler on this keg or not? And it just gets so it's really exciting. You can't run this large learning model on the device, on the edge. It would be very inefficient, but still sending that data up to the cloud to run AI across it. It's just so many ways you can pick up low-hanging fruit now with AI and start using it straight away. It's really exciting.
Ben, can you tell us about a hackathon? Michael, I've got no tech background, but what happens in a hackathon?
Hackathon is an event where you get tech-minded people, and they don't have to be engineers. You could have anyone, even if you're in marketing or you're an accountant or something, you can still go to a hackathon and join a team. They have varying timeframes. Typically, the ones I've seen are around 30 hours, where we have these tasks, or you can bring your own task and say, we're going to build this over this period. The first one I went to was in 2014, I think. That was called Hackathon, Wollongong's hackathon.
That's great.
Yeah,
that's brilliant.
Over at UOW, and I went there with an idea of building an internet-connected chicken hatchery. And that was because at the time, my mother was into chooks, and whenever she went overseas, I'd have to look after all these chickens and incubators and things like that. And I thought, this should be on the cloud, right? And over that 30-hour period, we 3D printed this model. It was a chicken egg hatchery, but it was shaped like an egg. It had a little trainer that could rock back and forth. It had temperature sensors in it. It had a little heater and a fan so it could control the humidity. and it was all connected to the cloud. I had this user interface showing whether there was vibration and the eggs were starting to hatch, and it could send alerts to the phone. We built this whole system in 30 hours with a team of 4 of us. And I just remember at nighttime, I was clocking past, midnight, then 1 a.m., then 2 a.m. So I'd had this 3D printed robot arm that would rub out the time and then, draw the time in whiteboard marker. And so you could always tell, how late into the night it was getting. And everyone was still working. It was still bustling, and nobody here is being paid a cent. And they're building amazing things, like doing what should take a business months or years to build in the space of 30 hours. And it was just eye-opening to see what people are capable of accomplishing when they're doing something that they're really passionate about. And my team won that hackathon, which was fantastic. We got a big novelty size check, and that was one of the pivotal points where I realized, I've probably got to go out into that entrepreneurial space and start, really doing this every single day. But this most recent one was very similar again. It was based here at iAccelerate in Wollongong, and the teams were provided with certain problems to overcome, and each of the teams just formed and built their solutions over that 30-hour period.
It's great that you can bring a problem that you actually have too. Like you had a problem that you needed solving.
Yep.
And through passion and teamwork, you actually managed to do that.
Yeah. It really is exciting. That's another thing as well. That one of the lessons is understanding how powerful a motivated team can be as well. If a team actually understands what they're working towards and has buy-in into that vision, it's not just 10x, it's 100x in what can be accomplished by a team that's really focused and working towards something meaningful.
Yeah, for 30 hours too, that's a pretty long stretch. So
yeah,
it is testament to what a shared goal can do.
Yeah.
So I just got a couple of more personal things, Michael, just to finish up with. Probably from your point of view, it's been quite a journey to get to this point now. I know some of our chats we've talked about the journey and the challenges of being an entrepreneur and being a business owner. I think that's probably something that kind of made us closer and made us understand each other. I mean, I can hear it just by hearing you speak, how much you've even learnt and come forward since we last spoke. But what are the main things you think you've learnt on this journey that you can share with other people that might be thinking about starting the journey, or maybe they're some way into it and questioning themselves, questioning the journey, the things that we've kind of talked about in the past?
Yeah, I'd say it's natural to question the journey, that's for sure. I've heard from successful entrepreneurs who have long since sold out their companies very successfully, still looking back on that journey and describing it as like you're drowning for 10 years straight. It's like you're constantly on the edge of like, are we going to make it huge, or are we going to die? And am I going to get another breath of air or not? And it's only when you look backwards that you can say, really build confidence in, I've been in that situation so many times before, and every time we overcome it, and you learn about what your capability is and how, you still got to keep looking to that future. Don't just look to the short term or something. Keep track of the big vision and keep working towards that. So that questioning of the journey is very natural. Another thing, I guess, making mistakes along the way is completely normal. I know I did it completely wrong when I began trying to do it on our own without a community around us. The connections you make are it's already a bit audacious to try and do something and change the world. It's like, who am I to actually change the world? And then to think you could change the world on your own as well is even a little bit more out there. Like, you're going to need support. You're going to need other like-minded people along the way, along the journey to contribute to that vision as well. So that's where I really feel that what I learned, and I wish I realized sooner, was how valuable it is to have that community around you. It doesn't have to be other startups, but it definitely has to be a broad selection of, call it like mentors, people you can bounce ideas off and get another perspective from as well. That's just been a really valuable thing that I would recommend to everyone who's trying to do something on their own.
And we first met at the gym, I'm pretty sure, at Reflex, in some of those early morning trainings. So I always wax on about how much martial arts, specifically Jiu Jitsu's, helped me along that particular journey, and how the qualities that I've learnt, developed, same the people I've met. You're one of those special people I met in that place that have I've learnt a lot from. Yeah, do you feel the same? I'm interested in what you've got out of that, out of martial arts and your training there. Like what does it do for you?
Oh, there are so many aspects of how it's not just augmenting, but it's a key to business as well. If I rewind a bit, when I was in my late 20s, I'm 40 now, 41, and I was 29 years old, and I did my back in, and I hurt it pretty bad. Like for about a year, I felt like an 80-year-old. Like I was really struggling to get out of bed. It was really bad for a long period of time. And I think martial arts was something that helped me build up my core strength and get through the sore back issues, and be able to, the feeling of being a 30-year-old, but in a body that was ready to give up, wasn't motivating. It made me feel like I was already at the end of my capable tether of what I could accomplish in life. And having the discipline to keep going to the gym and working around that, solving, doing exercises that could work around that, but also augment my physical health, was super valuable in, making sure that I had this body that could get me through the rest of the journey, of course, right? And carry me on to what's going to come in the future. So there's that physical aspect that's really valuable. The second would be around the learnings that we get in the martial arts gym. I like to think of it that, in business, things tend to happen slow. Like if you look back, wow, they've happened quickly, but everything feels like it's happening very slowly. And sometimes when I look back at things I've learned in business, I realize those are exactly the same things you learn on the mat, but instead of over years, you learn it in over minutes or sometimes even seconds, where exerting your will on someone and seeing how they react to that in a very fast environment. These short micro learnings we have there also apply to life in general over a much longer time period as well. And so that's been really valuable as well. And building that focus as well, it just helps, I think, in day-to-day life. And then I guess the third part, of course, which you already mentioned, is meeting the other like-minded people as well. You meet all kinds of really interesting people, and you build a connection. And I think, again, that's one of the primary driving motivations through not only business but through life, is the people that you meet and get along with and learn from.
Spot on. I couldn't have said it better. Absolutely. Yeah. That's Danny, that's kind of covers the things that I wanted to ask. Anything else that you wanted to cover?
I guess a novelty question or a closing question. What innovator throughout history do you look up to?
And there are so many. I'm fascinated by the modern big names, like the Jeff Bezos or the Elon Musk or those guys. Like, they've done incredible things, and the exciting thing about them is how they've applied innovation in this modern world. Like we've been given a framework of how society works and capitalism and how money works and how to leverage that to create amazing things. So that does excite me a lot. Looking back into the past as well, like I always preferred Nikola Tesla over Thomas Edison. Wesley Foyles as a kid as well. Like it was just one of those things where I loved that.
And the elephant, do you get fascinated by that elephant story?
The marketing. Yeah.
So it's quite a genius.
Yeah. So and so there's so much. That's exactly right. Genius. There was so much genius back there, and it shows how much of technology we already understood so long ago as well, and seeing how that's played out over the many decades as well. Yeah, I don't have any one really that I look to, but yeah, it's very exciting to look at them and how things are happening over time and model what we're doing about how can we learn from what's already happening as well.
So if we use, in your opinion, where we're at and the technology and the possibilities in the best possible way for humanity, because I think at the beginning you said we're kind of at a crossroads. We got a lot of stuff, a lot of decisions to make as humans with our options in technology right now. If we make good decisions, I know it's hard to predict or impossible to predict, but just in your vision, what does that look like to you? What are some of the things that you think we can look forward to or expect? Wow. Maybe even with your technology, Michael, what would be the pinnacle of your technology in application?
Yeah, if I try and reflect, I see a future where there's two angles here, where we have almost infinite knowledge or computing power to figure things out, and we have almost infinite connectivity to connect things to that hive mind, if you call it that. And the way I see that connectivity side is that, many years ago we paid $30 for a SIM card, and then Things got cheaper, and we started when IoT came out, we were paying about $3 for a SIM card, and then now we can be paying like 10 cents for a SIM card. It's just, when I look to the future of connectivity, I feel like just assume it's going to be free, compared to the value we get out of it. So, so if we also zoom out and look back over time, I do believe that right now we're in probably the best time humanity's ever had. Like the problems we're dealing with today, and people get very excited and emotional about the problems we're having today. So many things in the newspaper, but compared to the genuine like famine and issues we had, 100 years ago, we're in so much of a better place. And being the optimist, I feel like we're going to go to more of what we have now, where the great things that are going to come will just become normal to us. The people are going to have more freedom to pursue things that matter, that advance humanity, or just get interest themselves, the arts, things like that. I think we're going to see a lot more of that. It's taking away a lot of the base needs of humanity. And I really hope that happens on a global scale as well, that we see that moving towards not just for Western culture, but all of culture really having the base needs meted, and we get to focus on the bigger future, higher thinking problems as we go forward.
So Danny, if I connect the last chat with Jürgen to this chat, if it all goes well, we're going fishing and Michael's bringing the beers.
You know exactly where we are.
Hey, we're not going to lose the beers either.
I'll be fresh.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Michael. I appreciate your time for sure. Looking forward to seeing you keep smashing it. I know you're going to do well, and more people should know about you, especially the local community. I reckon you'll be known as one of the local heroes for sure.
Oh, thanks a lot, Adam. I really appreciate you taking this time to chat with me as well, and good to meet you too, Danny, as well. Thanks for your time.
Great to meet you.
Looking forward to more walks and chats, Adam.
Yeah, for sure.